Hello and welcome to the Virtuous Life. I'm your host, Pat Odie Murray. And today I am quite interested in this interview. This is a gentleman you may have heard on some other radio shows. I know he was on Glenn Beck talking about this book. And so when I got the book, I was really a little leery because I have not read, and now you're going to think I'm crazy, I have not read any of Tolkien's work. J.R. Tolkien, if I spit that out right. But I haven't read any of his work because I'm like a Lewis and, Chesterton kind of gal. And that's kind of the books I've read. So I thought, well, I want to read this book. And I did, but I must admit, and Paul will tell you, our guest, that this will be a hard read if you're not familiar with Tolkien's work. So our guest today is Paul List. He's self-educated with a focus on scholastic philosophy and Christian theology. He's been on a variety of shows, like I said, including Glenn Beck's show. And he wants to share Tolkien's relevant prophecy about the greatest threat to humanity, idolatry and slavery as a result of over-reliance on digital machinery and artificial intelligence. Paul, welcome so much to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, Paul, let's just kind of talk about why were you so interested in Tolkien, first of all? How much of his work have you read? What drew you to him?
Well, what drew me to him, like maybe a lot of people, late boomers, as we're called, my parents read us the book, starting with The Hobbit and then into The Lord of the Rings when I was probably about 10 years old, and it fascinated me then. And then later in life, as life goes on, I decided that I wanted a scholastic education. I was about probably 33 or 34, and I had a literal, very powerful vision that God gave me. We'll just, I guess, leave it at that. And then he provoked me to read, and I read intensely. God put everything in front of me to read. And then when I was, among the many things that I have studied, there are many papal encyclicals, particularly the great popes that I really admire, like Pius X and Leo XIII, who are also very influential on J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh, yeah.
And then when I read Leo XIII, Aeterni Patris, where he was calling the Western world back to the sanity of Aquinas and the scholastics, and trying to turn them away from the suicidal ideas that we see manifesting and metastasizing now in our own age, the suicidal ideologies of the Enlightenment, I realized this is so Tolkienian. It just read like an epic battle scene of ideas. Wow. And lo and behold, I went back to the Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's work, including the Silmarillion. You really have to know the Silmarillion too, which was published posthumously by his son Christopher.
Oh,
and that's the backstory, the two through 2.5 ages before what we all know anyway from at least the movies as far as they go. And I opened it up again, and with my scholastic education that I've worked at for about 20 plus years, everything just absolutely unfolded. And it's a scholastic mythology. It's Aquinas versus Descartes. And it's a psychological saga. It has really little to do with the material world, as Tolkien called it, his secondary world, which is really the realm of the non-physical, the non-material, particular, made up of, primary matter and form that we see as being, as material being. It's the essences that lie behind that, which is the principles and the and the essence of being, as opposed to just what we see from the attributes that they present to our material senses, eyes and ears and taste and whatnot. So it just opened up and just became very, very clear to me. And then I read many other things, including some of the most important, if not all the most important papers of Alan Turing, the father of the computer artificial intelligence in a process called morphogenesis. And I realized that this is exactly what Tolkien's doing. He's giving us a stark warning about the oncoming of artificial intelligence and the doom of transhumanism if we don't wake up pretty quick.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I'm going to take us back a little bit, Paul, just because I want to make sure our audience understands the terms we're kind of throwing around here, okay? So
Sure, yeah, okay.
you talk about a scholastic education, that you kind of got your own scholastic education at like age 33. So explain that to our audience. What are you talking about when you're talking about a scholastic education?
Well, first off, we'll talk about the nature of education. I've never met a teacher, frankly, that knew what the word educate means, and it means to lead out with authority, and it used to be the authority of the church, and now after the Reformation, it's become the authority of the state for the most part. So to lead out of what? To lead out of the evils of ignorance and paganism. And it really is what, is at the foundation of Christendom, the Western Christian civilization. And so it was replaced, and we'll just call the highest peak of the scholastic mind is Thomas Aquinas.
Okay.
And his Summa Theologia. And it really is kind of the handbook for, a copy of the Summa should come with every physical body and soul. It's just the handbook to, although it's a very, very, it's quite a commitment to work yourself up to read something like that. But so that's at the apex. And then at the Reformation, Francis Bacon did away with the scholastics because he said that they never gave us anything materially valuable, never made us rich, never gave us eternal life, never gave us pleasure. And that's what we want. And so he sparked his new scientific method, which he is the father of the modern scientific method, which really does away with metaphysics and just focuses on physics and
just the material
and
world.
Mathematics.
Right.
Yeah, right. And he went after wealth and eternal life, and it basically gives the earthly city in Augustinian terms, city of God. It gives the earthly city everything they want, which is immediate reward in this world for all the wrong reasons, and it neglects and pushes out the city of God, which is we live as virtuous children of God. We live for heaven. We don't live for this world.
Right.
The earthly city lives for this world. So they want their heaven on earth. So we see that going on all around. So they pushed out the scholastics and said they're useless. Bacon actually said that there's really no value even in the syllogism, which is at the root of our deductive reasoning, which is crazy. So he just focused everything on the empirical data that we collect from our senses and built the scientific revolution. Upon that, it brought about the age of the machine, which is the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
And then that intersected with the age of the information age. And together with the machine and the information, lo and behold, we have an idol that we've made in our own image that will make us worship it, and that is artificial intelligence.
So really, with Francis Bacon looking at science and empiricism, it really kind of then it just shrinks the idea of truth, right, to only the material world then, right? Is that kind of one of the big issues, right, with this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it forces the particular sciences to try to explain the natural world by the evidence provided by the natural world itself. And nothing, it's like asking nature to justify itself, and that's impossible.
Right.
So, so we've gone blindly into this age of the machine, and Tolkien saw that coming very early with his experience in 1939 with Alan Turing as part of the top secret government code and cipher school right before World War II.
Okay, so I want to follow up with just before we get, because I do want to talk to you about Turing and this whole code breaker thing. But follow up for me, because you talked about how once you got into kind of this scholastic education, when you were starting to think bigger than just the material world, it reminded you of Tolkien and what had been read to you when you were 10 and what you read. So can you kind of tell us what works of Tolkien have you read, and would you put them in order for us? Because sometimes, they do something after, instead of a follow-up, it was actually written earlier, but it's not released until afterwards. So can you kind of put them in order for us too?
Well, in the order of production, Tolkien started working on his writing and his ideas, which changed radically over his lifetime, as anyone would expect a very creative person, very virtuous person too, I might add.
Yes.
To do his work, advanced and was perfected by his faith. And as his faith grew and his work grew, and particularly after his experience in 1939 with Alan Turing, and he saw the writing on the wall, then it totally changed his perspective of the future, and therefore changed the perspective and the end for his own work. And it transformed from a cosmogonical, which is this realm, the material realm, which he had that idea in the beginning. It changed to a psychological, which is the interior, which is the mind. So he created this character, this being called Arda. Within Arda is a man across the sea from Middle Earth. And Middle Earth is where all the action goes on that we know that most people are familiar with, because that's where the realm of the movies are.
Okay.
But this is an individual human being with material intellect and the organ of thought, which is the material brain, which is Middle Earth. And then across the sea, which is our feelings, by the way, also is the immaterial realm of the immaterial intellect. Okay. So he makes a psychological saga, and he gives character to all the attributes of the rational soul and all the things that are damaging to the rational soul, vices, artificial intelligence, all these things. And then they play out in a grand saga to de-transhuman Arda, because in the time of the destruction of the ring, Arda, this human being, now it's the representative human being of all Christendom, has become transhuman. It's got the microchip. And Arda makes the decision to get rid of the microchip and return to his humanity, revert back to Catholicism, and ultimately become a saint.
Okay. So you talked, when you mentioned, is it the Silmarillion was one of his works? We're familiar with Lord of the Rings. Is there the Hobbit? Is there another? Are there other books in there that we should be aware of that kind of tie into this?
I mean, you can, of course, there's all the notes and progression and things that are in the 3 big hardcover volume called The History of Middle Earth that was compiled and published by Christopher Tolkien after his father's death, just like the Silmarillion was. But it goes really in order. It goes, The Hobbit is kind of the entry point. Hobbits are habits, by the way, just to let your listeners know. They are habits. And the 4 hobbits that we know so well, Frodo, Sam, Pippin, and Merry, are the cardinal virtues, which are the highest of the habits. Frodo is temperance, Sam is fortitude, and then there's Pippin, who is prudence, and justice is Merry. And against Frodo is Gollum, and Gollum is intemperance. And that's why he calls Frodo master, for one reason. So and the ring, by the way, is binary code, the one ring shape, and it's digital, goes on the finger. So it's the language of the machine. Ultimately, we have to destroy the language of the machine, which is at the heart of all digital technology. Ones and zeros, binary code.
Got it. Okay, so let's go then to Tolkien's relationship with Alan Turing, and the obviously Turing influences the way Tolkien then writes what he believes is important. He writes kind of, if I'm understanding this correctly, kind of cautionary. These are the things that Turing is talking about. This is, we need to be aware of what these things can do. So explain the relationship between Turing and Tolkien, and also their work for the government, where they were being trained as code breakers. Tell us a little about that.
Well, about 18 months after the publication of The Hobbit, Tolkien was very well known, because The Hobbit was a huge smash success. And his publisher was pressing him constantly to write a sequel, because, of course, they want to publish more and make more money. In 1939, the British government put together what was called the Government Code and Cipher School, which was 50 of the top intellectuals in England before Hitler came to the shores of England or threatened England directly. They decided they better try to crack their communications machine, the Enigma machine, which was a ciphering machine, which could scramble any language into almost an infinite number of possibilities. So it was very powerful. And the Germans needed it to, advance there and communicate their front of their war front, the theater of war, which was vast all across Europe and Northern Africa and the Atlantic. So this is very important. So Tolkien was recruited to be part of this team, and get rid of this ball here if I can.
Sure.
anyway, he was recruited to be part of this team, and there on staff was Alan Turing, who had in 1936 basically invented the digital computer on paper with his paper on computable numbers with an application to the Skydance problem, where he on paper literally invented the concept of the elements that would be necessary to basically replace the human computer, which was a person. We should always remember. I don't know if you can still hear me. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So Tolkien was part of that team, and he realized very early, he was only there for 3 days. They offered him a job, and he said, no, thank you. And he didn't take it, and they were miffed, and he went back to, they said, oh, he must be more interested in fighting Mordor than, this is what writers and whatnot have said after, many decades after,
Sure.
but that wasn't the case at all. He realized that this wasn't about language. He was the world's leading philologist, which is the science of language. And the Germans weren't inventing a new language. This was a machine that was just scrambling the German language and then unscrambling it on the other end. So this was the realm of the mathematician, the statistician. It was all about probabilities and statistics and pattern recognition.
Okay.
So he wouldn't play a part in that anyway, but he also realized very soon, very clearly, that all they were going to do is invent a machine that was more powerful than the Germans' machine, and all he was going to do was participate in the advancement of machinery to the downfall of humanity. And Tolkien was a big skeptic of machinery because he saw very clearly through the Industrial Revolution and the downside of the machines. It's always got a payback and a cost that's never taken into consideration. All we look at is the ease, the pleasure, the efficiency, the profit, and we never look at the downside. And Tolkien knew very well that machinery has a great downside, and this was going to encroach into the human thought process, which is sacrosanct. And he didn't want any part of that. So he went on to write his Lord of the Rings. It totally changed his trajectory and the whole essence of his mythology from one of a cosmogonical material realm, where Middle-earth might have been some realm in some fantasy time here on Earth,
right,
to actually the psychology. It's an immaterial. So that's why he calls it his secondary world. It's secondary in the nature that it's where the metaphysical realm is not the primary realm, in the primary real world that he calls. So he wrote a mythology to actually show what was coming, and he gave us the solution.
Okay,
which by the way is virtue.
Yeah, exactly. Just the name of this show.
Yeah.
So,
exactly. Yeah.
So tell me, because people are, people that might read this book are familiar with Lord of the Rings, and they might wonder, well, why do you think this book is based on a deeper reality than just the story he's written? What is it that makes you think this is more? This is more than just.
Well, let me give you I'll give you an example. Okay,
Great.
Say you've got a 4,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and you've turned over all of the pieces, so all you see is the back of the cardboard, and it takes you 5 years to put it together, and you never see the picture.
Right.
Okay, and then you it's on a piece of glass. You put another piece of glass on it, you flip it over, and lo and behold, there's a perfect Mona Lisa. Do you think that was accidental?
Yeah.
Of course not.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, so what Tolkien did was he created a masterful jigsaw puzzle with his mythology. That's why nobody's ever figured it out until now. And part of the reason is because nobody studies scholasticism anymore. They're all lost in the Cartesian modern education, which is just empirical, frankly, materialistic only. He created this masterful jigsaw puzzle. He put it in a box, and he put the wrong picture on the box. And everybody's been looking in the wrong direction, and he did that to protect his work.
Okay.
Because his work would be very threatening to the powers that be, very threatening to the evil powers that are always trying to tear down humanity, put an end to God's creation. And it worked. And he knew that if he did that in God's time, God would pick somebody to figure it out. And that just happened to be me. It's not because I'm special. It's not because I'm smarter than anybody else. It's not because I'm I think, I'm holier than anybody else. I'm certainly not. God works with the most unworthy instruments, as we see through Scripture. Yeah. And, why I was chosen, I don't know. But I knew very well that if I didn't write this book and get the message out there, that would come my personal judgment. It would be very bad for me.
So, Paul, have other people tried to take a shot at telling us a deeper reality or truth that's written in Lord of the Rings, or are you the first person?
Oh gosh, yes, they have. Oh gosh, of course. Had I known how scholarly and prolific is the many Tolkien scholars and writings and the many works that are out there that are, from very capable academics, I probably would have been petrified and to even put pen to paper, but I didn't read anybody else. I didn't look at anything else. I just did what I was supposed to do and got it done. But most of the people that have looked at this, they don't study scholasticism. And if they do, they've never put the two together. Tolkien was a scholastic. He was raised in the Birmingham Oratory after the death of his really holy mother, Mabel, who, by the way, we dedicate the book to, because we wouldn't have any of this without her and her dedication to the faith. She died a martyr to stay Catholic and to make sure that her son stayed Catholic.
Can you explain that to us? You said she died a martyr. What is? I'm not familiar with that.
She would not come back to Protestantism, so she was neglected by both her parents and her in-laws after her husband, Arthur, had died in South Africa and left her in England with two young sons with no support and no material support. And Mabel had found the Catholic faith and knew that it was the true faith, and she converted to Catholicism, and her sister May did too. Her sister was forced to come back to Protestantism by her husband, but Mabel didn't have a husband anymore, and she didn't come back, and both her parents and her in-laws were very, very staunch Protestants, and they demanded that Mabel return to Protestantism, and she didn't, and they would give her no support. And she basically died of neglect, malnutrition, a very treatable form of diabetes, simple, treatable then. But she died very young, about 34.
Wow.
And she was the biggest influence on J.R.R. Tolkien. She was a wonderful pianist. She painted. She spoke at least 4 languages.
Wow.
She taught. J.R.R. Tolkien basically provided the foundation of his whole life, and her sacrifice for the faith burned a very, very indelible mark upon J.R.R. Tolkien's own psychology, and he was very devoted to his mother, and then he became very devoted to the faith. So the Catholic faith, is very important to the mythology, but like he said, there's nothing overt. It's so absolutely baked in to the fundamental essence of his mythology that he didn't need to make anything overt about it at all. It's there in every turn, every facet. It really is. It's a story about someone who had the faith while a child, and then fell away and fell into Descartes' dualism through his education, and then ultimately took the microchip and became transhuman, and made up his mind that this art of this individual representative human being that represents all of Christendom, which is the foundation or the material within which the whole mythology takes place, ultimately decides that they're not going to be transhuman anymore. They want to return to their humanity, and they revert back to the faith and get rid of the ring and get rid of the chip. Yeah, go ahead.
So, Paul, we've got about little under 3 minutes left in the first half of the show.
Okay.
But why use mythology to express these deeper truths? Can you tell us?
Well, a couple of reasons. Because much more likely to inspire and communicate to a very broad audience, which we can see. Tolkien, unless you've lived under a rock for the last 75 years, you know who Tolkien is. I mean, there aren't that many people all around the world. Globally, it's probably the most popular intellectual property in the world right now. It's almost timeless too. It still incredibly popular. I would like to say something about the movies. The movies were well done. As far as the first three movies were very well done, but they were like a heresy in the fact that they subtly changed very many things that made it a different story.
Right.
Fortunately, it got a lot of people interested, and I think a lot of people went and read the books, which is important. And then the Hobbit movies and the other stuff that was made after was just purely chasing money, and it was disgusting. But so why use the mythology? Because for two reasons: it's going to soak in a lot deeper and a lot more broadly. And it's also very unthreatening. It's completely unthreatening. Tolkien's mythology hasn't threatened really anybody until now. Now it's going to threaten, because people will understand what it's about. It's going to threaten these demonic powers that are always vying for domination and destruction that we see all around us. And Tolkien knew those demonic forces very well. He's very well of the greater combat that goes on beyond this, our senses. So he put it in a mythological form that would be most easily digested, most entertaining, and protect his work. And that's exactly what he did, and that's exactly what has happened. And he left it in God's hands. He knew if he just produced it, like I said, in God's time, whether he was dead or alive, it would come into prominence and be revealed for what it is, to intersect with what it was supposed to intersect with, which is artificial intelligence.
Okay. There was just, and I've certainly been doing a lot of people writing articles on AI, a lot of people, starting to talk about the ethics of it, looking at it through the lens of, the faith, and then certainly transhumanism is a big thing that is also kind of connected to all this, and it's interesting. It really, I must say, it makes me very nervous. I'm a college professor, and I don't really like AI, but that's a whole other story.
You shouldn't like AI.
It is replacing people's thinking, and
it's replacing people at every level. In the name of convenience and pleasure and wealth.
Yep. Yeah.
And all these other, bait, bait the trap. They always bait the trap. And I'll tell you, the greatest bait in the trap, and we can get into this after we come back.
Yeah, we will.
The greatest bait, the most effective bait, is pornography.
Oh, yeah.
And Tolkien took that into account very strongly in his mythology. And we can talk about that.
Yes, we will. And so I want people to know we're talking to Paul List today. He is the author of Mount Doom, The Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed. He's been on lots of shows talking about this book, self-educated on scholastic philosophy and Christian theology. It's a very intriguing conversation, and I really appreciate him being with us today. So come back on the other side of the break. You're listening to The Virtuous Life. I'm your host, Pat Odie Murray.
This is Dale Ahlquist with a Chesterton Minute. G.K. Chesterton says, "It is a very common phrase of modern intellectualism to say that the morality of one age can be entirely different to the morality of another. And like a great many other phrases of modern intellectualism, it means literally nothing at all. There has been a revolt against Christian morality, and where there has not been a return of Christian mysticism, it has been a return of the mysticism without the Christianity. But I believe that the moralists arguing with the immoralists will have the best of the argument, because men cannot argue without doctrine any more than they can fight without discipline." Want more than a minute? Visit us at chesterton.org.
The Adoration Sodality of the Poor Clares of Perpetual Adoration at the Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament in Hanceville, Alabama, is a prayer group for laity, priests, and religious brothers and sisters to spiritually join in the nuns' mission of adoring our Lord Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist. Members commit themselves to an hour of Eucharistic adoration on a monthly, weekly, or daily basis at a monstrance or tabernacle at the parish of their choice. Learn more about becoming a member at iadorethee.com.
Hello and welcome back to The Virtuous Life. I'm your host, Pat Odie Murray, and today we have with us Paul List. Paul is kind of a self educated person, but his focus is mainly on scholastic philosophy and Christian theology. He was on the Glenn Beck show to talk about this book that I've read, and I must admit, see, this is the problem, and Paul will understand. I haven't read Tolkien, so I haven't read Lord of the Rings. I didn't see the movies, so without any kind of background on Tolkien or Lord of the Rings, I plowed through. I plowed through this
Wow.
book, and I really did feel like I needed a scorecard or a sheet to write, to try to keep it all together. So I wish I would have had somebody who actually read the book help me and give questions, because I'm kind of backing up and taking some general approaches. But Paul did a great job with this book, Mount Doom: The Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed. And Paul, before we went to break, you were talking about how there's so much that tries to kind of move us into idolatry and slavery, and you talked about the idea of pornography and how Tolkien saw the danger and hopefully maybe had some solutions. Can you fill us in a little bit on that?
Yeah, I've got to believe that at least a solid portion of your listeners will have at least read the movie. And I strongly suggest, Pat, that you do read the books. One of the problems with putting it in a mythological form, people have always kind of looked at it as like, I don't like fantasy.
Yeah, not really a big one. Yeah.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
This really isn't fantasy. It's just really put in a different language. It's put in a scholastic language. And a lot of people, unfortunately, seem to think that means that it's allegorical, and Tolkien famously said, I cordially dislike allegory. And, there's all kinds of other things. There's symbolism, there's parable, there's fable, there's metaphor, there's simile, there's typology. There's all these things that are also, sure, they could be categorized in or have reference or relationship with allegory. But unfortunately, any representation or symbology that Tolkien used, people that I can show, people say, oh, you're making it an allegory because this represents that, or this symbolizes that. Well, of course, you can't make a story with any meaning to a human being unless it's has some foothold in as a reference.
Exactly.
So you just can't do it. And I've asked people, well, then if he didn't symbolize these things, how would he even be able to communicate anything? He clearly said that the mythology is fundamentally Catholic. He said it's about the fall, which is the fall of Adam and Eve, death, specifically the fear of death, mortality, he says, and the machine. And I show where these things are and how he symbolized them and how they work together in the mythology to explain everything. And I still get people say, oh, you're making it an allegory. Well, then please explain to me how he would have been able to write anything that made any sense if he didn't use symbolism. He does. And he says he uses symbolism, and he says that allegorical language cannot be avoided, and it's often the real life of the story. So he certainly did use it, but he used all the tools. But back to pornography, the people that are familiar with at least the movie, know the Shelob's lair, the big spider, that Gollum, who is in Temperance, by the way, leads Frodo, Temperance, Frodo, and Fortitude, Sam, with the ring. And the ring is binary code. It's ones and zeros, and it's digital. It goes on the finger. Leads them into pornography, which is Shelob's lair, which is pornography, and trying to get them to fall to pornography, and he'll get the ring back, and he'll be able to slake his lusts with the digital tools. In other words, looking at pornography, looking at violence, looking at all these terrible things that he's been slaking himself in for centuries in the mythology. So he leads them into Shelob's lair, and then what ultimately saves them is the phial of Galadriel. And Galadriel is an elf princess, and I won't get, most people will realize who she is, particularly if they've read the book. And if they read my book, they'll understand that she is the fifth of the Ten Commandments: honor thy father and thy mother. And she is the intercession of the prayers of the Blessed Virgin for her son, who's become transhuman. So she gives them the phial, which has got the light of the Silmaril in it. And it's when they go into pornography, which is Shelob's lair, the spider that's going to devour them, Okay, and what saves them is the file. And the light of the file drives back Shelob, and ultimately with Sting, which is the elven sword that they have, they defeat Sam, essentially defeat Fortitude, defeats the pressure of pornography and pushes back the spider. But the file of Galadriel, you'll get a kick out of this, Pat, because of the terms, how they relate word for word. The file of Galadriel is filial fear. Okay, it's filial fear. It's not servile fear. We can if you're tempted, for instance, to look at something you shouldn't look at, like pornography, you might say, "Oh, I'm not going to look at that because I don't want to burn in hell." That's servile fear. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work, because pornography is right there, and hell might be 50 years from now, and I'll make it up later. That's the mentality of the human being.
Yeah.
Okay. But filial fear is based and rooted in true charity, which is our love for God. It's our love and our relationship for Christ. And we don't look at pornography, not because we're afraid of hell, but we don't look at pornography because we're afraid of offending Christ. Mm-hmm. We don't want to molest and taint our relationship with God. And that works. That's the only thing that can save us from things like pornography. So this is the type of thing that Tolkien includes in his mythology that is so powerful and so edifying and so necessary and valuable for the human being in this time in human history to know and to understand. And for instance, pushing back against the trap, the ultimate sticky bait to draw you in and destroy your mind and destroy your life and bring your soul to eternal ruin, is pornography. And it's a huge problem right now. And it's been a problem forever, but Tolkien knew that it would be very great in the digital realm.
Yeah, I was going to say technology has just made it explode. So, Paul, what was going on in that time when Tolkien wrote this that he felt he had to kind of be secretive about, his work?
Well, he was very much he was a professor of English literature and languages at Oxford. And Oxford was very Protestant, of course, because it had been stolen during the Reformation.
Sure, King Henry.
And England is very, very, at this time, very anti-Catholic. Okay. Catholics are persecuted still very much. It was only, I think, 2013 that a member of the English royalty was actually allowed by law to marry a Catholic, and they made that because of Catherine, I think, married Andrew. But you could be Islamic, you could be Jew, you could be a Martian, you could be an atheist, but you couldn't be a Catholic and marry into the royalty. So there's always been a bitter government-sponsored hatred for the original faith that King Henry VIII and particularly his daughter Elizabeth I really did a number on to push out and persecute. Yeah. So he was under that pressure. His mother had died from it. Right. And, there's a lot of pressure. But then later he read the other works of Alan Turing, because he was smart enough to realize how powerful the ideas of Alan Turing were and what they would ultimately lead to. So he had already, I'm sure at that point, had already read On Computable Numbers that was published in 1936. But then in 1950, he read, because all the elements are in his mythology, he read Computing Machinery and Intelligence, where Alan Turing redefines what intellect is to just be nothing more than imitation. And then with the hopes that we would be able someday to make a machine that would harbor a human soul. And there's the essence of this eternal serial eternity in a machine, rather than, and then heaven would be replaced by the virtual realm. And then the other paper that he read was in 1951, which was Chemical Basis of Morphogenesis, which I'll just say for the sake of simplicity is similar to an offshoot of embryology. And the mathematics that he developed there are very powerful, and modern computer science are using them today for the artificial intelligence to develop its own synthetic neural network brain. So he knew this was coming. He could tell. I've read all the papers, and it's pretty obvious how he used the elements in these papers to actually wove them into the structure and the fabric of his mythology.
Wow. So Turing, he goes on then, I'm trying to see if I understood you correctly. One of the last things he writes about is maybe creating a machine that could house the soul. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. He had a, he had a same-sex relationship with his friend Michael from his childhood, who had died early. And one of the letters that he wrote to Michael's mother was this hope that, or the idea that we would be able to make a machine that would be able to harbor human soul, and his lover Michael would be able to come back in this machine.
Really?
So this is the essence of the whole. Yeah. Oh yeah. People, these ideas are not new.
Yeah.
But what is new is our material technology and whatnot that's actually made these ideas a reality in our own age. For instance, virtual reality. Virtual reality is as old as philosophy itself.
Yeah.
It was called the continuity, the question of continuity, whether this creation and motion was one, infinitely divisible, never find a space in between it, or if it was really just a series of indivisible points, pixels, digits.
Wow.
And our senses can't tell the difference.
Right.
But we couldn't, of course, make that a reality, but now we can.
Now
it's very
we can.
dangerous.
Yeah,
it's a direct competitor to God's creation.
Yeah. Wow. So you also kind of in the book bring up various things like, moral relativism and Marxism, that this work addresses those things, his works. So
it does.
Can you kind of tell us where do we see that?
Yeah, the character Saruman. First off, the wizards are the intellectual virtues according to Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics.
Okay.
Gandalf's philosophical wisdom. Gandalf the Grey is pre-Christian, pre-revelation Aristotle, for instance, and Plato. Okay. And then when he falls to the spirit of academic pride, and he is tempted mightily by Darwinism, and he defeats that. And he comes back Gandalf the White, which is a full-blown Thomistic theologian. Okay, and he's no longer doubtful. He's no longer gray. So he takes possession of the great spirit of decisiveness, which is the fastest horse, which is Shadowfax, and that's decisiveness.
Okay.
So and then Saruman, who was once good and became evil, is practical wisdom, and he's taken over academia. And Isengard, the Black Tower, is the black and ivory tower of academia. The Mines of Moria are the halls of science, doors to our scientific knowledge. So what happens is Saruman now and then I'll go on, Radagast is rational intuition. The other two blue wizards that go outside the mind are art and science, and their exterior, they come in through our senses, so they don't play a part in the mythology, but take them into account. So Saruman, practical wisdom, has taken over academia. It's no longer about metaphysics anymore. It's no longer about real philosophy. Gandalf's pushed aside, and practical wisdom has taken over. Well, who is Saruman in the image of in the mythology? He's none other than the image of John Dewey. That's exactly who Saruman is. He's John Dewey.
Really?
And that's where the Marxism comes in. Yeah. Yep, I read all of John Dewey's works, and he's a dangerous cat. He's from my hometown of Burlington, Vermont. So
really?
They really, they've apotheosized him at the University of Vermont. I've got some stories, but anyway.
And Dewey, when I was growing up, he was a big, he was like worshipped. This is the guy that brought us public education. What a mastermind, He brought us industrial public education. He did away with the scholastics. He brought on total moral relativism, where it's democracy. There's no immutable truth. There's no principle. It's only what it's mob rule. Okay, and he did away with and his whole idea was to take the children from their parents as early as possible, and then raise them for the mechanical, the machine, the state. And that's exactly what he's done. And then, so therefore, we have what they left out in the movies, the scouring of the Shire. They have to get rid of in the realm of the habits, where the hobbits are, because habits are hobbits are habits. They have to get rid of all these bad ideas and these bad socialist Marxist habits. And that's the whole nature of the scouring of the Shire, for those of your listeners who have actually read the books. Wow.
So Marxism is represented by the John Dewey image, who is Saruman, made directly in Saruman's image, and then Wormtongue, who's the slave servant of Saruman, John Dewey, is the Marxist woke teacher.
Interesting. Wow.
Oh yeah, Tolkien saw all this coming because he was paying attention to John Dewey at the time. Had become president of the Teachers College at Columbia University, so he was spreading his errors throughout the whole Western world through his students.
Right.
And Tolkien, being a teacher, he very much appreciated the nature of teaching and pedagogy, and he saw what John Dewey was doing. He was absolutely turning the human mind into a machine, just to be downloaded with the program, with the ideology, and that ideology was Marxism. Because Dewey was a huge Marxist and a big fan of all the advances of the age of the machine, the Industrial Revolution. So he industrialized the human mind through the school system. We have to do away with that. We really have to do away with that.
Yeah,
and return to the scholastics.
Yeah, and I think there is certainly I see some glimmers of hope. I think more and more, especially after the whole COVID thing, and parents saw what was being taught. There's more parents turning toward homeschooling. There's a lot more schools starting that are in the liberal arts tradition, critical thinking, the Chesterton schools. So I think people are waking up. But boy, this is such a behemoth of an issue. I mean, education is big. It affects everybody at every age level, and so it's going to take a long time to turn the ship.
It is. And I'll just mention my co-author, who I actually mentored when he was young and got him out of this mindset. And then he went on to become a Navy F-18 pilot and then taught at the Naval Academy, and then started his own Catholic classical education school, the Divine Mercy Academy in Maryland, which is the fastest growing school in the state.
Yeah.
And it's all about real, true classic Catholic education.
Yeah.
So my co-author, that's exactly what he does.
That's wonderful.
And he's also now he's the executive director of the John Henry Newman Institute.
Oh,
he's got a lot of irons in the fire.
He
He's
does.
very, very, very capable.
Yeah,
he actually made the book a reality. I wrote all the essays, and between him and I, we put it all together in this form. So
wow.
Lee is a great gift. He was once an atheist, and now he's a very staunch Catholic.
Oh, that's amazing.
Educator.
Yeah. Woo, we need those. We need
the
those.
truth will set you free.
That's right.
We sure do.
So, Paul, is there any other characters, because you've been giving us some as you go through different things, but are there any other characters you want to kind of clue the audience into so that if they've read it or seen the movies, they'll go, oh, I didn't see it that way. So can you clue us in on any others? Okay.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of my calling card that everything fits perfectly. And I have to say, too, that my co-author, Lee, didn't believe it either for several years. He just thought I was nuts because I was so far removed from the conventional interpretation of Tolkien's work. And then it just hit him one day when we're putting together my ideas about the trees of light and whatnot. It hit him, and he just realized that, my God, you're right. I finally understand what you're talking about. I couldn't believe he'd helped me for several years before he actually understood that I was right, which is kind of a testament. But one of the things that the biggest secret or enigma has always been since the publication in 1954 and 55 was the identity of Tom Bombadil and Goldberry. And they were left out of the movies because nobody ever knew who they were, and Peter Jackson and company didn't either, and so they didn't have any idea how they made any difference, and they didn't see the point, so they left them out.
Okay.
Well, they left out that the Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are the heart of the mythology. Their destiny is what the whole mythology is about, because they are the rational will and the rational intellect, including the conscience.
Wow.
In the psychology. They are. Tom Bombadil is the rational free will. That's why he can do anything he wants. Okay, and he is master. That's what Goldberry calls him, master. Okay, and Goldberry his wife, is the rational intellect and the conscience. And they are the fallen transmigrated spirits of the trees of light, which were in Amen, the immaterial realm. And they were in a state, when they were alive and waxing and waning, actually in the circle of fifths or the spiral of fourths, according to musical modulation, as I point out in my book. They were in a state of grace. And then when they fell to mortal sin, which was Shelob's mother, Ungoliant, the great spider creature, Morgoth, who is not Satan, Morgoth is original sin. He brings Ungoliant, mortal sin, in, creating the occasion of sin, because Tolkien knew his catechism, and Ungoliant, mortal sin, kills the trees, and the trees give off one last flower, silver flower from Telperion, and one last golden fruit from Laurelin, and Aule, the spirit of growth, takes them and makes new bodies for them, just as he had made the dwarves, and they become Tom Bombadil and Goldberry. That's where Goldberry, by the way, gets her name. The last fruit from the last fruit of the golden tree was a berry.
Okay.
So, so some of the characters, for instance, and I always tend the Ents get left out, and it's really a shame because the Ents are really powerful. Treebeard and company. Okay, the Ents are the Entelechies. They are from Aristotle's the anima on the soul. They are the agency that brings potential into actual.
Actual, right.
And what they do, the potential, are the trees. And the trees are the Hurons, who are the trees that, if you've seen the movies, they had them in there. Well, Hurons are neurons.
Oh, okay.
So what the trees are, and if you look at a neuron, a picture of a neuron, it looks exactly like how Tolkien described the Hurons, which are, trees with this big eye in the center. Okay, and those are neurons. So what the Ents do is they actually cultivate and develop the growth and cultivation of the material brain, while Saruman in academia is busy destroying it. And so they're that's who the Ents are. They are the Entelechies. So that's from Aristotle's De Anima. And then the orcs, for instance, orcs are vices, and they are constantly trying to destroy, and they're dug in, just like the hobbits. They're ramified. The hobbits live in holes because habits are dug in and they're hard to break. You've got to I'll just get going on some of who these things are. Men are reason at all its levels, from high reason, which is Aragorn, down to vital instinct, which is the wild men. They left those out of the movies too. And in between are the Rohirrim, which are common sense or what's called practical reason.
Okay.
And then Gondor is in the image, it represents the Catholic Church in Western history. Okay. And now it's under attack, and hell is at its gates. Mordor representing the hell, and it has a steward. Okay. Stewards doesn't have a high king. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, because, Paul, we are running out of time. I've only got about 3.5 minutes. I want to get right to this, what should Christians do if we're afraid of this kind of potential enslavement to AI? What are some of your ideas?
They're Tolkien's ideas. Okay. He gives us the answer, and the answer is virtue. We have to become virtuous. We have to practice virtue, cultivate the cardinal virtues. We have to become saints. We have to get right with Christ. We have to come back to the true church, the true faith, which, by the way, the white tree of Gondor is the TLM. It's the traditional Latin Mass, the Mass of the Ages, and it comes back. Okay, it's constantly persecuted, constantly can't be attended.
Interesting.
Okay, we have to get right with the true faith. We have to get right with the true faith, and we have to come back to Christ. We have to come back to true Catholicism. We have to, if you're a Protestant, get out. Come back to the true faith. Come back to the true faith from this second, I'm sorry to say, post-Vatican II synodal church, this new religion that they're bent on foisting upon us. We have to push back. Tolkien makes that very clear. The white tree is the TLM. And it'll flourish again when we actually, cultivate virtue and we get right with Christ. So and it's about we can rise above, listen, Pat, we can rise above the realm of the machine. The material realm is the realm of the machine.
Right.
The machine said of itself, as we quote, it cannot be ethical. It can't be virtuous. It cannot be ethical. We can. Right. We can through contemplative prayer, and in our thoughts and in our minds and our ambitions and our attention, where we put our attention, we can rise above this realm and out of the realm of the machine, and we can save our souls in doing it. And the people who don't and fall victim to all the bait and the trap of the machine and can't rise out of it, they're going to be devoured by the machine. And that's just a brutal reality that we're in.
So in a sense, then, when you're talking about bringing virtue to all of this, especially with AI or with technology as a whole, it is about trying to find where the use is good for humanity and support that and get rid of where it is replacing humanity. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yes, and don't let the computer seductively take away your human competence one little piece at a time. Don't let it write for you. Don't let it do your research. Don't do any of this stuff. Don't allow the computer to make you weak. And it will make you weak and incompetent. And, practice your handwriting. I wrote my book I resurrected my curse of handwriting and wrote practically the whole thing by hand. And, handwriting makes a big difference in how your brain is wired.
It does.
Just like pornography. Pornography makes a huge difference in how your brain is wired to the negative.
Right.
Destroys the mind. And, so these things, we really have to make an effort. If you're not making an effort to improve yourself, it's like any other exercise or health regimen or working out or whatever. You have to make an effort, and you have to actually make a sacrifice. Yeah. And that sacrifice ultimately leads to a better human being. Yeah. Obviously, the greatest sacrifice is on the cross.
Exactly.
And so we have to return to our humanity and push the machine down into the realm where it belongs, which is just a machine. It's not intelligent. It has no conscience. It can't have a conscience. It can never be alive. Yeah. And we have to treat it as such, and don't ever let it suck you in and pervert you into believing that it actually has a soul, because it doesn't.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for being with us. This hour went by so fast. And I want to let our audience know, Paul List, he was with us today for this whole hour. I'm talking about his new book, Mount Doom, The Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed. Lots of good stuff here. If you're a Tolkien fan, pick this up. If you've read Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, any of that, he's got some great insights. So thanks again, Paul, and audience. Thank you for being with us. Have a virtuous week ahead. Thanks for listening to The Virtuous Life. I'm your host, Pat Odie Murray.